Hello everybody, it's Jason again, and we're back on the Jeep. So last week we cut this thing apart, got all the rusty bits and bobs and the rockers out. You got to watch all that, and this week, now you get to watch us put it all back together. So now you can stop panicking. We have a video to help you out. Alright, so here we are in our Jeep, right? You saw last week, we got this driver's side rocker off. Come here, take a look. Come on down here. We got this driver's side rocker off. You notice this whole lip was gone. This is where all this rocker structure, the inner part was rotted out. It wasn't doing anything. So what we had to do is we cut that bottom lip off. We just shaped these up real quick in our brake over there, and this will literally, we're just gonna run it over top of that like so. We're gonna stitch it on with some weld, and that would be just fine for replacing that lower pinch weld, which is really important to tie all the rockers together. But before we do that, we are going to talk about the rockers that we're putting in this thing. So what we're putting on this Jeep are these rockers. These come from, I believe we got them from Quadratech. They're made by Key Parts, and they're officially licensed from Mopar. And these are what they consider like a full rocker. So what's a full rocker? Well, this basically here goes right to the factory seams. So if you get like a slip-on rocker, it's not going to be this big. You would just get like, trying to hold it without cutting myself, it's sharp. Yeah, wear gloves too, people. Things are sharp. If you would get like just a cap, some people call them different stuff, all you're going to get is like maybe this piece that wraps down around here and it comes up to the door jamb. So what that means is you're going to have to cut and probably weld it along here or wherever this thing ends. I don't like doing that because that adds another failure point. So wherever you cut this out and have to re-weld, if you're doing a slip-on, that weld's probably going to fail before the rest of it will. So that means your bodywork will bubble out and all your bad stuff's going to happen pretty rapidly. There are ways to prevent that from happening, like inner panel coating is really important to that scenario. But that's why I like doing the full ones. That's the best way to do it. You eliminate all the rust. It's a little more work, but you get a lot nicer job in the end. All right, so before you put your rockers on, it's very, very imperative that you get some good paint behind all that. So clean all your rust off. Get some paint on it. You want paint on the inner rocker, on that pinch weld, up in here, down in there, over here, everywhere. And what we used today was this Chem Flash Prime. I like that. It's a good rust inhibiting primer. It's industrial. We just brushed it on. You can use like a spray can. This is a etch primer. You can use that. Or they actually make a weld-through primer that you can use. I particularly don't care for the weld-through primer. It just kind of spatters and makes a mess, and I don't really like it. It welds funny. So what I normally do is we'll get that on there, we'll get the rocker on, and I will go through the little holes and scratch some of the paint off to make sure it welds good. You're going to want to do that. But get the paint on any bare metal surfaces that are going to touch, because it will start rusting between all this stuff before you know it. So it'll pretty much be eliminating all your hard work that you did. All right, well, through the magic of TV, we got our passenger side one clamped on, clipped on, and just really kind of want to reiterate the factoriness of these. As I was saying, now we got our mess cleaned up over there. The factoriness of these rockers is fantastic. They fit really, really well. Probably some of the best rockers I have hung. We literally slipped this thing up in here and had to do minimal trimming back in this area to get it to fit. So they fit great. And if you can't tell, this is what I mean by factory. This covers all the factory bases. It slides underneath your pillars really nice, all of them. It matches your pinch welds wonderfully. We do got to cut these little tangs off. I don't really know what those are for, but maybe just something left in the stamping process. Not a big deal. It's got one up there and one back here we need to cut off yet. But they fit really nice. And if you noticed, I don't know if you're familiar with these guys. These are called Clecos. And greatest invention ever. That comes from the aircraft industry. And basically that is just a blind deal to hold these on, which we'll go over that more in a minute. But buy these rockers. You're going to love it. So, you noticed on the other side we just showed you, it had holes in these pinch welds up here. And well, how do you know where to drill? It's really, really simple. You hold it to your panel up there, and you're going to mark where you kind of need to drill. And it's not rocket science, guys. But basically all we want to do is drill a little hole in this guy to mate up with this guy to replace our factory spot welds in there. So from here, we'll go out to the bench. We'll show you what we need to do. So now we have our holes marked. We know that this is kind of our door opening through here, where I marked these two and those two. So that's where we got to put our holes, in between here. And you don't need to put a whole bunch of them in there. Sometimes what I will do is I will just come in here and I will mark them just for quick reference of where they need to go. And so we know right in here between this mark and that mark, we know that that is our B pillar. We'll throw some back in here like so. But pretty simple, guys. And then along the bottom, that whole bottom will get them. So you don't really need to mark any of that stuff out because you're just going to space them every couple inches. I think there's like maybe 4 inches on some of them. It's not rocket science. Just you need to get them in there. I want to show you this cool tool too really quick. This is a hole punch and flanger, and I have no idea where this came from. I've had it for years, and there's no marking on it whatsoever, so I can't even tell you what brand it even is, but you can get these anywhere. The Chinese tool Emporium is the word I'm looking for, has them, and they're the same design, so it's probably the same company that's made them since like the beginning of time. And what that will do is it'll put a hole in your panel. Now this hole's too small. Poke a hole with this, drill a hole with that. Check it out. So all you want to do is, well, we got to flip this thing upside down. It's air powered too, by the way. You want to slide it over top of that. You catch that, buddy? Hole. Come down here. Another hole. You just kind of continue that process. So, since some holes are too small, I like to open them up a little bit, make them a little bit bigger, easier to weld. These aren't near big enough. So the problem is you won't get penetration on your metal below here. It'll just fill that hole up and then, well, it doesn't stick to anything. So I like to use a unibit, which has miraculously disappeared. Found our unibit, and who would have thought somebody put it back where it belongs? Who does that? Usually we just lay stuff on the table till it gets lost. All right, so if you don't know about these unibits, these are a must-have for sheet metal. Because if you use a traditional bit, when they cut through, the flutes on a traditional bit will actually grab that sheet metal and tear it and rip it, even catch the drill and rip it out of your hand. This eliminates all that issue. You can pick these up anywhere. And some of them are kind of expensive. Some of them are cheap. The cheap ones are cheap. They don't last very long, but the expensive ones seem to go pretty good. And they're all stepped, and I don't know, you can't see it in here very well. There's actually sizes marked in that flute. So, just like drilling a hole. Start it out. And that's about it. You don't want it much bigger than that. So all you gotta do is rinse and repeat down the whole line here. All right, tech tip time. Drilling holes in something like this. Get yourself a junk piece of wood. This is an old 2x4 we had laying around. Slide it underneath, and then that keeps this part stable and gives you something to drill down through so you don't have to drill off the edge of the table. Kind of a weirdo, so I always try to line up the hole I drilled previously with the hole I'm drilling. I don't know why. It's just like a thing of mine. And there you go, folks. That's your tip of the week. Tech tip number 2. They're all on sale today. Buy one, get a second one free. Actually, you didn't have to buy the first one. That's free too. Either way, I'll shut up. Check this out. That drilling process leaves a little burr on that. And yeah, you could grind them, but I hate grinding. I hate sparks. Kind of lazy sometimes, but use your unibit. You're going to run it down through. Kind of walking around a little. Don't necessarily want to go all the way through, but that will clean that hole up just wonderfully. No burrs. All right, so we got all our holes drilled, hopefully in a proper spot. Hopefully we got enough in there. Should be fine, but should make note that that is like one step over a 1/4 inch hole, so it's like a 17/64. So you probably don't want to go any bigger than that. Keep them kind of small. And the one thing I don't like about this pneumatic hole punch is it kind of puts them close to the edge. I would rather see them up maybe in the middle of the panel, but that'll be just fine for what we're doing here. That's not going to hurt anything because I absolutely hate drilling holes, so that is a big time saver for me. But the real question is, why do you drill the holes? And I can answer that. We'll take a walk over to the car. I'll take this with me, and we can explain all that. All right, we're back on the passenger side here. And if you remember from the last video, we talked about these spot welds, how they use unicorn magic and the pressure and the electrodes and stuff at the factory to install these rockers and parts. Well, they make tools to kind of replicate that, but most people don't have them, and they're kind of finicky and they're expensive. So we drill these holes in these panels, these guys, to basically replicate that factory weld. So this is what they call a plug weld, and you will You're going to clamp these two together. You want to make sure he's flat. You want to make sure that metal's clean behind there. Right now we got primer on it, but we'll talk about that in a minute. And you're going to weld through it just in a circular motion, and that replicates that factory weld. Now, why do you do that? Can't we just weld along the seam here? And I suppose you could, and it would do the same thing, but that spot weld and this plug weld are really, really strong because you get 360 degrees of weld on it versus just along the top or the edge. And your weld would not fail. The sheet metal around it would fail and pull apart. So whereas all these little spot welds here, that pretty much eliminates that, because if you've ever tried to cut one of these apart, they cut apart hard. So there's a lot of strength in these plug welds and in the factory spot welds for being as small as what they are. There's just a whole bunch of them. So we're going to continue on with the other side. Back on this side. And you'll notice we haven't got our inner rocker in yet, and that's okay, but we're going to dry fit our replacement rocker panel here. So, and that's just to make sure we got all our plug welds, or plug weld holes rather, in the right spot. We have enough that it's going to do what it needs to do, and to make sure the thing fits. So we know from the other side that there's a little tab here, and we had to bend down out of the way to get that rocker in, and that we need to grind a little bit of material off of this general region here to get it to slide up far enough. So I'm going to address that really quick, then we'll get to fitting. All right, we got that ground off, and I want to show you this tool really quick. It's a little belt sander. This one's made by Cornwell, and a bunch of manufacturers make them. It's my favorite tool in the shop. I own like 2 of these, and they're just great for stuff like that. And once you get one, you're going to use it all the time. Check it out. All right, so we're going to get this thing fit in here, just a dry fit. We're going to go slow, so old Eddie B back there can work his magic with that camera thing so you guys can watch it. So, first step, get your front end. He'll slip in underneath this, in between this. So we took our little stick spreader thingy tool, and we got in there, kind of opened this up from the 2 panels. So you're gonna kind of have to maybe bend stuff around a little bit. It's not an exact science. So push him in. You see, he goes all the way up into that area. And that's why we had to push this tab out of the way, because you never get him in there. We'll just pull him back when we're done. And then if you look over here, this is like a seat folding pin. He's in the way. So kind of bend him out and around. Give him a whack. See, he's above it now. And now we got to try to get this pinch weld in between all this stuff. So bear with me here. Our little tab here that we need to cut off, that we should have cut off, he actually folded over. I don't know what his purpose in life is, but right now he's making mine hard. That should be enough. There we go. Check it out. Now, what you want to do is, this side over here fits really nice. This side back here kind of fought us. And I see it just must be the nature of the beast, because that side fought us too. So what you want to do is, if you got a buddy, you're going to kind of hold up on this underneath like so. You want to make sure this gap is kind of closed up through here. And get it up. Try to get the tops of these to kind of match together, because that's going to dictate how far up he's pushed. You see, I can push him up a lot just with my knee. And you want to clamp it here and on the bottom. all the way through. And then if you have Clecos or zip screws or whatever, you could shoot them down through here to kind of hold this all together. So that's the gist of how this goes in. Like I said, this one isn't quite ready to be welded in yet, but we just wanted to show you the fitment of these and how simple it really is. Very, very minimal work to get this panel to fit nice. So once again, we're gonna jump on the other side. We'll show you how to button that whole deal up. Check them welds out, bud. Come on in here. Come on in. Nice tight shot. That's generally what you want them to look like. You can see we got a little hole over here. I would touch it, but it's still hot. Then that little pinhole, if you can't see it, we got a light. There we go. I'm going to want to come back in there and hit that pin weld, or that little pinhole, because what will happen is water will collect in there, and he's going to start rusting. So we'll have to fix those. Any of those that you have, we're going to have to fix them. So now that that's out of the way, we have to weld all these holes up to, well, to the actual rocker. So that it's really important that all these are flat. So by flat, I mean they have to be pushed down against each other tight enough to make good contact, or else it's kind of a wasted weld. So you want them as tight as you can get them, preferably no gaps in there. And let me get this thing over here, then I'll show you. A little pointer. If the camera guy comes over here, we can show you the difference. So like these right here, see, these have gaps. We don't want that. What you do want is, where's a close one? Where's a close one? Is these right here. I don't know how good you guys can see those. See how nice and tight this is? It's down nice and flat, and that's what you want. So, and even this one right here is pretty decent. So if they're not like that, you could take the end of a hammer. I mean, not this. You ideally want a wooden hammer because it won't melt and burn that much. And you're going to hold it in. All these spots that you need to push in, you can push in and get it tacked so it sticks. And then you can take your hammer and kind of move them around and get them flat against there. So that's really important. Number two, if you noticed when we was talking about the flatness of this, I got all these scratch marks. And that is from this little dude here. And that's the way I've done it for quite a few years, is I leave that E-coat on and I scratch it off. Whether it's right, wrong, or indifferent, that's the way I do it, and it works. It doesn't really interfere a whole lot with the welding process once it gets burning. And you do the same thing for anything else like you've primed behind that. You just kind of come in and you'll scratch some of that paint off just to make sure you get good contact, because with that paint on there, it's gonna spatter and spark, and it might not even start if it's really thick. So that's really important that you do that. So how do you get this plug weld so nice? Well, I'll just kind of show you here with this. So now that we got our little welding torch here, how do you get around that circle? Well, it's really simple. Come on in here, camera dude. So now obviously I know these are down tight. We're just showing you guys, so put your keyboard fingers away. You're going to start in the center. You're going to get your puddle good, and you're just kind of going to just walk it in a circle. And you should be able to see your puddle as you go, and you're going to walk it to the outside edge. And then you'll quit, because if you keep going, that's going to fall through. Because this stuff ain't very thick. It's a 16 gauge, so that's going to fall through, and you're going to have a hole to do now. That to fill in. So they should look like this. You want them nice and flat. That's kind of what you want them to look like. And you want to bounce around. You wouldn't want to weld this whole corner and work on down. So you want to weld a little bit here, you want to weld a little bit here, weld a little bit there, and by the time you get down there, you should be able to come back here. My golden rule with sheet metal is if you can't put your hand on it for any length of time, don't weld it. So, before we get too far, we're going to pump the brakes, put it in reverse, and talk about the welder we're using. Okay, so we're doing our welding with our old friend here. This is the Lincoln Electric Pro MIG 135. We've had this probably for, man, gotta be close to 20 years. And it's stuck a lot of vehicles together. And this is a little 110 unit, so it plugs in a regular house outlet. And we could use our big heavy Hobart with the big wire in it, but there's no need for all that. That puts a lot of extra heat in the panel. You just don't need it. So this little guy does a good job for the 16 and 18 gauge sheet metal that we do. And it's my preferred little go-to welder because we have history. We've done a lot of stuff together. So what are we doing for wire? This is a solid MIG wire of 0.024 with a shielding gas of, this is argon, and this is the 75-25 mix, and it's non-flammable because it says so right here. And then if you come over to the side, little cheat sheet, guys. You got a cheat sheet up here for all your different thicknesses, and then this is it's the inside of this little guy. So this is a good one. Get yourself one of these little welders, and this will probably do anything that most hobbyists will want to do without an issue. So definitely worth a buy. So I bet you think that we forgot all about these little Clecos deals that we talked about like, a couple minutes ago, I guess. Well, we didn't. We just wanted to do some welding and stuff because we thought you were probably bored with hearing me talk. So show you something halfway exciting. Anyways, these Clecos, super neat little tool. So I believe that they came from the aircraft industry, and then the racing and the hot rod guys, the fabricators, got turned on to them because, well, they work great, and you need this special little tool here, and they're cheap. They're not expensive, and none of this stuff here is expensive. So this has, if you can see it, there's a horseshoe part and then another little top part, and you just squeeze them. So that corresponds with these Clecos. So the horseshoe part goes underneath, and you squeeze, and yet gently remove it from the hole. And if you look at the end here, that is actually what does the clamping force. It goes in that little 1/8 inch hole that you drill right here. I don't know if you can see it very well. And then when you let up on the pliers, this pulls the two panels together. Now these are really cheap. I got this kit from Summit Racing. You can get them all over the internet. They're really affordable and really nice. But if you don't have the Cleco tools, you could go really old school, which is what I did for years, because it was kind of how I was taught, and use a zip screw or a tech screw or a self-tapping screw. People call them all kinds of different things. These are really cheap. So you'll need an electric drill, or in this case, it's a little impact. And it is nice to pre-drill your holes. So I don't know what size these are, but that's 1/8 inch hole we pre-drilled. And these will cut their own threads. That's why they're called self-tapping. So you just, and that will hold everything together. That's a good quick way to do that, but the quicker way is the Clecos. So if you're going to do a bunch of them, buy the Clecos, just because they're cool and they're fun to say. So you can do all that stuff, and the obvious thing is these vice grip C-clamps are super handy. That's holding the pinch weld at the bottom. But the real winner here is when you can use them, use them. Now these guys are super cool. So their only purpose in life is to clamp around the weld area. So that way, when you're welding, you can clamp that sucker right around your spot weld area, clamp it down tight, get your welder in there, and zip on that thing. And then you just take this guy with you, take him off, move him down to the next spot, clamp, 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 and so on. So that's pretty much the long and short of the best way to hold this stuff on. And before anybody says it, because I know somebody's going to say it, you never test fit your doors. Well, here's the thing about that. The way this thing is put together, there's no point in really test fitting your doors. You can't go back anymore. You can't go up anymore. As long as this is where it belongs, and this piece is where it belongs, and this guy is where he belongs, and everything's fitting nicely, it's going to be right. You just have to have confidence that it's going to be right. Now you can put your doors back on, zip screw, Cleco this, clamp it all on, hang your doors, check your fit and your finish. Because at some cars that's really important because of the way they're put together. Some of them you can get up and down movement and in and out. And that's going to dictate your bottom door gap. But on this thing, we don't have to, because if this stuff is all lined up and square and pretty looking, you're not going to do much else about it, because there's a lot of strength left in this. Like, you're not going to be moving this pillar around short of cutting it and moving it. It's a waste of time. So with that being said, use common sense. If you think you need to hang the door on it, get this guy all zip screwed on, clean coat on, clamped on, whatever method you want, and hang your door. Get your door fitting nice around, all around here. And if you have to, hang a front fender back on it where it belongs, and get your hood fit to your front fender and your front fender fit to your door. And if it's a 4-door, get your rear door on to fit to your quarter. It's a lot of work, and that's why these cost so much when you go to take it somewhere to do them, because it is a lot of work. And the right way to do it is to pull all this stuff off, get your panel on, put it all back together, make sure your fit and finish is good, and then you can make it done. I don't know what else to say. Just get it on there. But once again, this instance, we don't necessarily have to do that because we know it's going to be right. All right, so we're kind of jumping ahead here. We still got more welding to do, but we thought it was important to talk about these welds, how to grind them, how to finish them, whatever you need to do here. So if you look here, that's a good weld. That's what you want it to look like. It's nice. It's just got a little dome to it. All the holes are filled. There's no porosity. And you notice it's all clean around here. Now, if you jump right over here, you see how he's got a little hole? This isn't what you want. This is porosity, which is a hollow point in the weld. And that is from the paint and the gunk and everything else that's around that I did not clean off before I welded it. So that's very important to make sure that your paint is clean around it, with no seam sealer, old paint, nothing. Just bare metal. That way you get a good clean weld, and that's less grinding for you, and it's just a lot better looking. So you don't have to go back in and fill the little holes, because that'll make a hole that you're going to have to go back in and weld. So, that being said, how do you grind these all off? When you get that big grinder and just get in there and just really destroy stuff, you don't want to do that. So, once again, we're back to my favorite tool here, and that is this guy, little belt sander. You can get in here with this and you could just very, very gently, you don't want to get on the outer sheet metal, you just want to catch that weld right there, like this. And that's generally what you want to do. You don't want to take it down much further than that. The other option here is a trick that the guy I learned all this stuff from showed me. And this is just your typical cutoff wheel with no guard on it. And that is 2 3-inch cutoff wheels stacked together. So if you feel like you need a guard, put a guard on it. I don't ever run guards on my stuff because I'm partially dumb and the other half stupid. So just be careful with this. And this will just do the same thing. You just kind of put her on there and grind away. This will give you a little bit, not such a smooth finish, but it will equally get you where you need to go here. Check it out. How about we try not to shoot sparks all over me? There you go. You see the difference in the two, and they both work really well. And then both of those you can get in wherever you need to get in, man. You can get in there. So if you want to take them down to there and then use like a little 3-inch abrasive disc to kind of finish them off, to blend them all together, that's cool. I like to do this and then take a DA with 80 grit. And that does a very good job of kind of blending everything together. And then you can really see if you missed any spots welding, any little pinholes. So both really good tips. They both work really well, and I'm going to get to grinding here. So now you get her all ground up, clean, ready to go. You're ready to paint it, right? Well, not quite. Just slow down there, bud. Put her in reverse, Terry. You need to seam seal it. So this stuff is made by SEM. This is a dual cartridge seam sealer, so that means it's chemical reaction stuff when it comes out the tip here, and all kinds of magic happens. And this stuff's really good, easy to work with, holds up really well, dries quick. You need a special gun for it, though. That's the only thing. But they do make just regular seam sealer in a caulk gun style tube. And this stuff's important because anywhere you have these factory seams, well, obviously the factory had seam sealer there, and you need to put seam sealer there too to keep the water from going up in there. Any moisture is going to get up in there and it's going to start rotting that because there's no air movement, so that's just going to lay wet. So that's why this stuff is important. You need to get it on all the factory seams. You can put it up here, along here, and basically you just put it along, run a strip down. You can either use your finger or just run it straight down, or you could use a little acid brush. They're the real kind of stout little brushes with the metal handles. And just do as neat as you can. Get it brushed in, do a nice neat job. Sometimes I'll run tape on either side of these to make a nice little seam. And we'll probably do a video on that stuff a little bit later, but for right now, you guys can figure it out, I think. Maybe, I hope. You're smart enough. So, once that's done, you get her all painted. Oh, I forgot to mention, don't put this stuff on bare metal. You're going to want to put epoxy primer on it before you put your seam sealer on it. That's really important. That way it doesn't rust underneath. So make sure you do that. So now you got it in paint. You're ready to hit the road, right? Hold on. A couple of little goodies here that they never really get talked about, and they're really, really important to finish this job from being a backyard deal to a flat-out professional deal. That's cavity waxes. You see this guy's dirty. He's been floating around the shop for a while. SEM makes it. 3M makes it. This is made by Rust Free, and it's clear. And all this stuff is a wax-based corrosion inhibiting formula, improved spray pattern flowability, convenience aerosol. This is an aerosol. They sell a wand package, and you will come in, if you can come in the backside, come in the backside, come in through here, and you could just snake him down through, get him to where you can squirt him, and just pull out as you go. And I think 3M recommends to do that 3 times with this tool. This is actually for the SEM can, and this has got like a little 360-degree spray pattern, so it'll get everywhere. And do it down through all your holes that you can get in, and really put it in there. Because what happens is, where you weld, that will be bare on the backside. You burn any of the E-coat off the paint, and that's bare, and that's a failure point. So that will start rusting there first, and this inner panel coating definitely helps slow that down. It doesn't completely stop it, but it's gonna do good. Do good to help make it last. So do that after it's painted, because what's gonna happen is it's gonna drip out this bottom edge here. It's gonna flow down in, and it's gonna drip out this pinch weld down here and potentially ruin your paint job. So that's the last step before you put her on the road, before you put it back together. So it's a whole lot of talking in this episode, and I hope we didn't bore you too much, but we're going to keep welding and grinding, and we will show you this complete deal. Probably in the next episode we'll have this all buttoned up, seam sealer, the whole thing, and this ought to last this Jeep out. Hopefully this is the last set of rockers this Jeep ever gets, and we're going to keep on working. Hey, congratulations, you made it to the end of the video. Now, we had filmed all this, but we felt that we kind of shortchanged you guys on the ending sequence. So I'm here by myself. I did a little more work tonight and got this thing a little closer to being up to our standards of finished work. Still got a little bit more to do, but yeah, we just didn't want to shortchange you guys. And kind of to go over some stuff real quick. You know, if you don't feel comfortable doing this, don't do it. And any part of this like scares you, and it probably does if you've never done this before, just don't do it, you know. And that's partially why we made this video, to show the in-depth work that goes into changing panels on your vehicle. So everything we did here will basically transcribe to any other vehicle. So just, you know, a little different shape, form, you know, maybe a little bit different the way they're stuck together, but most everything is pretty much the same-ish. So, but even if it's not anything that you want to tackle on your own, now maybe you feel a little more informed if you take it to a shop and have somebody do it. So maybe now you'll know a little bit more of what they're talking about and stuff to look out for, and really know what you want as the customer of, you know, how you want this job done. So that's kind of why we made this video, and I hope you guys liked it. Really like you if you would like, subscribe, share, all that other stuff that every other YouTuber in the world says. But, you know, that really helps us out. And I guess, what would you like to see next? We like making these videos, and you'd kind of, you know, like some input from you guys if you want a little more in depth of this stuff, some more in depth paint bodywork stuff, you know, how to weld sheet metal. So you guys just let us know. We'd appreciate it. So if you loved the video, hit that like button. If you hated it, really sorry. You can still hit the like button. I don't much care. So anyways, we'll catch you on the next one. See you guys. Bye.